name is Terrence Mosley. I'm the Alumni Career Coordinator for the Career Services Center, which means that I help all of our alumni once they graduate from KSU in their career pursuits. To provide a little background on our Food for Thought for those of you who haven't been to one of these events, the Food for Thought series are luncheons. They're an opportunity for the student body to explore different career fields by hearing from experts and professionals in their respective careers. In the past, we've had Food for Thoughts on careers in entertainment, careers for veterans, higher education, and social media. But today is the best one because you've come to it. We are fortunate to have an amazing group of panelists who are going to talk to us about how they found success in careers outside of their traditional majors. You all need to think about cultivating skill sets and abilities that transcend your major that are going to be applicable to other career fields, and our great panelists here are going to help us to talk about that. We're going to hear from some folks here who have done just that. They have taken their educational background and utilized them in unique and different ways. So without further ado, let's get to the reason we are really here, which is our wonderful panelists. I want to introduce you briefly to our panelists today, and then I'm going to hand it over to them so they can really tell you about themselves. First, to my right, we have Ms. Brenda Smith. She's an entrepreneur and owner of Brenda Smith Jewelry. To my right also, we have Ms. Shirley W. Murphy, who's also an entrepreneur and owner of a business called Shirley's Helping Hands, which is a home health care business. And to my far right, we have Dr. Christian Hardegree, who's the founding director and professor of the Institute for Culinary Sustainability and Hospitality. To start off, let's go from person to person. Tell us about yourselves and tell us how your career trajectory has kind of led you to your current position. We'll start with you.
My first job out of college was I worked as an apprentice in a printing company as a pay stub artist. And they don't do that much anymore because of digital printing, but that was my first job. And then I was offered a position teaching in a private school, K through 12, taught art. They were not accredited yet because they lacked the art program. So they hired me to develop the program and teach the classes. And then they did get their accreditation. After that, I got a position at the local college, private school, Hiram College. This was in Ohio. My undergrad was at Kent State University, another KSU, and Hiram was just maybe 8 miles away, a small private school, and so I got a position there as a secretary so that I could eventually apply for the position of art director for the college. They hire within the school first, so they offer the position within the school first, so I knew that I had to work my way into it that way. And eventually I did become the creative director for the college. That was a fun job. Because it was a small school, I did everything, and I loved being diverse, and we did everything from TV, billboards, everything that was printed or was published or said about the school. From that position, I started working for an advertising agency as a creative director again, and that was fun working in commercial fields. From there, at the same time as I worked for the advertising agency, I started my own business. So I have been in business since way back, doing graphic design and advertising on my own. And I was a single parent at the time, so I had to work several jobs, and I was still doing hair on weekends. From that position, I took a job as creative director for a company called J&S Chemical, which at that time was headquartered near Cleveland, Ohio, but moved to Canton, Georgia. So I moved too. And the owners of that company had not even gone to college, but yet yet they had an extremely successful business. And it was a small company, and I said that I would be willing to go to school to get a business degree, to help this business in whatever way, and I did. So that's when I enrolled here in Kennesaw in the EMBA program. And after about 3 years, that school, or that business was bought out, and I found myself in forced retirement. That lasted about a year, and I went stir crazy. I mean, always having to strive and to work and be productive, it was hard for nothing much every day. So I started beading and making costume jewelry just as a hobby, and eventually had more than I could use or give away, and decided I needed to start selling it, and found that that is pretty saturated, that market. When you see craft shows and things like that, that inspect some of the shows, if you don't apply soon enough, they tell you, we have more than we can handle, no, we're not taking any more. So then I started contemplating, what if I went into high-end jewelry, gold, platinum, gemstones, and I started doing some of that just for fun, and at the end you get more than you can use. So then I started entering high-end competitions, design competitions, and started winning some of them, and started going to some high-end shows, the Vegas show, Tucson show, and started selling, and realized that there was a market for this. So from graphic design, which was my major, I never even knew that there was such a thing as being a jewelry designer or anything else. I thought I would be drawing things and designing paper and advertising all my life. So what helped transgress me into a different career path was forced layoff, number one, and starting a hobby that eventually turned into a career.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Good. It's an honor to be here today. That's the first thing. I'm Shirley W. Murphy, and I'm owner and founder of Shirley's Helping Hands LLC. It's a for-profit in-home healthcare business where I specialize in respite, recuperative, and Alzheimer care. Now, in respite care, it's rest and relaxation for the 100% caregiver of their loved one, and I go in to give them a break. The Alzheimer care is early stage diagnosis, where I go in and I coach the individual through daily activities like getting dressed, taking a shower, maybe meal prep, and this is short term usually. My assignment is usually 4 hours for as long as 10 days, depending on whether the person wants to go for respite. The other specialty area is recuperative care. The individual comes home with a doctor's discharge, and I help them do the things in that discharge summary so that they won't have to return to the hospital. I mean, take a weight, blood pressure, a vital sign like a temperature. And if they come home with an inserted tube or some kind of bag, I just sterilize the tubing itself such that they won't get an infection, or if they get an infection, I can call back to the doctor's office. And sometimes I do, it's called transportation, but really using the client's car to get them for a follow-up visit. So if you come home with a broken foot and you're in an air boot, I would get in your car, take you for your follow-up visit to PT or back to the doctor. So recuperative, respite, and early stage Alzheimer are my specialties. I'm a certified nurse assistant. I have a 4-year work history in traditional female occupations like sales, administrative support to outside sales. I've sold cars, I've sold automobiles. Used automobiles, but a big dealer. That was okay. I learned a lot. And most recently, I worked studies that I had started, I'm gonna say 10 years before going back to KSU in 2004. So I said, okay, I'll go to KSU, it's right in my own backyard. I live in Marietta with my husband. We don't have children. I have a godson who's like 15, and his parents are our good friends, and we help with him financially and emotionally, trying to get him where he needs to be. So I went home one day and announced I was going to school, college, specifically KSU. I already knew my major, business management, and I already knew that once I came to this campus, I was going to find ways to connect. And that's what I did. So while I was pursuing my undergrad degree in business management, I joined and put my name on the KSU volunteer roster. I took a class called Leadership Development. I don't know the name of the department. Brian Wooten was the director at the time. The Center for Student Leadership. So in those 2004 to 2008, before graduation, I had a 3-year commitment in the Student for Leadership department, and I earned a certificate in ethical leadership. So between my volunteering, finishing my undergrad, and earning the leadership certificate, I worked part-time in sales mostly. I ran or managed the business office for a franchisee who was over in Florida, but had a Sylvan Learning Center here in Bedford Atlanta. So I've done a lot, and I'm going to attribute the banking system leaving me to how I ended up in healthcare. I also took a non-degree course with the Edge Connection. That's another unit inside the business college here at KSU. And the question that they asked when I entered the entrepreneurial program was, what is it you would do even if you didn't get paid for it? And right away, I knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to help, give back to the community, start a legacy, and one day have somebody talking about Shirley's helping me and helping us. So that's the long term. The long term is to make this business grow, be a legacy so that somebody can be saying, I knew that lady win. And right now, I'm the only person who works at Shirley's Helping Hands, but I expect it to grow to 15 employees sometime next year. I'm just going to do it gradually by bringing on consultants. I guess you could have it, or 1099 people to start, and then I will grow it to where I will hire. I don't have any funny anecdotes to tell. I've taken the easy route. When I got out of high school, I knew I would have to work. So I went to work. When I got married, I still on too old for that baby thing. So there were no children. It's me and my husband of 22 years. But I'm real good through enthusiastic volunteering that I have built quite a network. And between where I live, where I play, and where as I continue to learn, I have so many people who say, if there's something I can do to help you with this business, you need to let me know. And basically, it's a word of mouth business. It's a real intimate business. The person has to trust you with their loved ones. They have to trust you in their home. Today, I have a mentor, favorite professor, and my biggest supporter is here. And I just want her to stand up. Her name is Dr. Nancy for Hospice, and she's in the College of Business. Over the years after I left Kennesaw in 2008, upon graduating, she always wanted to know what I'm doing. What are you doing? What are you doing? And I can always tell her. So right now, aside from growing the business, I'm writing a memoir that will include a step-by-step chapter on how to start your own healthcare business. And I'm writing a seminar that I hope to find a sponsor in a non-profit group that will allow me to come in, meet with other home health aides, to tell them how they can come out of the shadows through education and training, and then you can set your own rate. And that's what I've done. And let me tell you, the rate that I've set is competitive for this market, and I haven't had one family or individual who hadn't been able or willing to write my fee. So I'm glad I'm doing it, and again, it's because of loss of job, but I didn't have time to worry about the loss of job. I said, what am I going to do next? And that's my approach toward life. That's been my approach toward business. I have a simple philosophy. I want to share with you. One of them is scripture. and it comes from Psalms, and it says, "In thee, O Lord, do I put my trust, let me never be put to confusion." So no matter what happens to you, you ought to know that there's a reason for it happening and move forward. And my last one is from a business person named John O'Killen. And I don't know if I'm doing it verbatim, but basically it says that for as long as you live, you got to be in the business of trying. So quitting and giving up are just simply not options. For those of you who are pursuing your undergrad, I say stay in school, and no matter what kind of job you get, learn all you can from it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christian Hardigree, and I'm very thankful to be here and very humbled by the ladies that I'm sharing the stage with. I think one of the common themes that we've seen in hearing their stories is coming back to education and how education helps you have the tools to be successful in following those passions. The other common theme that I think is really important is both of these ladies haven't ever stopped moving forward. And sometimes it's really important, even if things are bad, if it's a forced retirement or a loss of a job or an industry that's gone kaput, it's what's the next step, and I'm gonna keep moving. I don't know that I've faced necessarily the same experiences in terms of loss of job. I just have sort of adult ADD and I go from job to job. It's a little different. But my growing up, I grew up in a very poor family and had to work to go to school and do things. My first job was when I was 13. I was selling Coca-Colas at Sanford Stadium. So when you see those people walking up and down the litany of stairs there, make sure that you smile and nod at them because they're working very hard. And I worked through food and beverage throughout my life. Actually, from 17 until a year ago, I've always had at least 2 jobs, and in some instances as many as 4, in order to provide myself with educational opportunities. And today I'm an educator. That's my passion, that's my sweet spot. What she just did with Nancy, that's why we do it, because it's not for the state pay. To have a student come back and say, that's my mentor, and that's my support, and that's somebody who checks on me and pushes me and inspires me, that's awesome. So quite frankly, can we give Nancy another hand? Can some of you be my students, please? You know, I would, when I first went to school, actually the way I got to school was on an athletic scholarship. I played volleyball and softball, and I went to a small school in Iowa, and discovered boys and booze, and wasn't quite a very good student for a while. But I was doing well in athletics, and I actually got recruited to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And so I went there. I agreed to go in March. I moved in June, and then July 1st, the legislature came out with a new budget, and they canceled volleyball as a result. And so I was 20, and I was in Vegas, and that was not a hard sell. So I said, yes, this place looks nice. I will stay. And I ended up studying hotel administration, partly because I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I was at an institution that did 2 things well, hotel and basketball. And I was going to make the men's basketball team, so hotel it was. I later went to law school, quite frankly, because I never wanted to be dependent on someone else. I'm okay depending on someone else, but I didn't want it to be necessary. And one of the things that I remember saying as a glib 22-year-old was that I didn't want to be 40 waiting tables trying to put my kids through school because my husband ran off with someone. And so it really was a sense of empowerment. I had no intention of practicing law. And then student loans came about. And guess what I had to do? I had to practice law. And so what I did in Las Vegas for about 15 years was I defended hotels, restaurants, and nightclubs. And I started teaching as a part-time instructor. I taught a class a couple nights a week and whatnot. And eventually, I probably shouldn't share this, but I actually had quit the law firm and quit the school, and I had taken a job running a dive shop in the Grand Canyons. Because I figured at my age, I wasn't married yet, I didn't have any kids, you could run away from home, that was a good time. And I had sold all of my belongings, I had sold my car, and I went down for about a month, and the university called back and said, we have an opening and we really want you to come back. And so I I called my law firm and they said, oh, sure, we'll hire you back. And so I had an extended vacation and came back and started teaching full-time and practicing law on the side. And I did that up until about a year ago when I came to Kennesaw State, and I was recruited to start what was originally thought to be a hospitality program that maybe had some culinary art element to it. And came and did a SWOT analysis and looked at what we were doing here on campus and what is the market demanding, what our employers really want. Again, going to my passion of providing students with the skills, knowledge, and ability to be meaningful and to get jobs and to contribute. And that's how the Institute for Culinary Sustainability and Hospitality was created. I joke that we try to get, lactose intolerant gluten-free into there's not an acronym for all of that. But we are a management program that really focuses on the culinary food service realm, the hospitality realm, which I think there's a significant tie to healthcare, as we're looking at an aging population, as we're looking at medical tourism being a $100 billion industry. The combination of hospitality and health is going to be essential as we move forward. And so we're providing that skill set with the understanding of how sustainable practices, things that are good for the environment, good for people, social equity, and for the economics of your business. And so we're combining those elements into our program. That's how I came to you here today.
Outstanding, great stuff. So you mentioned skills and abilities. I want to continue in that vein. We use the statistic that only 27% of grads find jobs in their majors. What are those unique skills or abilities or traits that allow people to cross over from career field to career field? You all have done different jobs and done different career areas. What are those skills or traits that allowed you to transition to those new areas?
I believe the following skills apply to life in general, not just career paths, but dependability, trustworthiness, honesty, dedication, professionalism, respect for others. And personally, I am results oriented. I like to make things happen. And I'm passionate about what I do, and I think all of these ladies are. And I think that goes a long way. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's not going to be successful. And then one other thing in today's world, I think you may not have all the answers, but if you have the ability to find those answers or to talk to people who can give you those answers, that applies to any field.
The last time I had to do public speaking, I want y'all to know it was in front of a third grade class. And I don't know how well I did with that. But at any rate, when I looked at my own transformation or transition into where I am today, the word unique skills and abilities, I went like, don't know exactly what I have in those categories, but these are some things that I think helped me. I was always an action taker. I'm not gonna sit around and talk about anything. If it needs to be done, it's going to do it. So I always take some kind of action, and I believe I set realistic goals that are achievable, not some far-fetched thing that's way out there, but something that was achievable, like earning a degree at 50 from ASU. That was achievable. Okay. Not easy, but achievable. And then you gotta be willing to learn a whole lifetime. And you can't be afraid to learn from anybody. Wherever there's something that you need and that person has it, I have been known to go until I get the answer. So just keep going until, again, you make it something that you've learned. I also think your previous jobs that you held, I don't mind about the job title because I believe professionalism is a behavior versus a job title. So my work ethic was real simple. If somebody hired me, I showed up on time, prepared to work. And that carried with me through where I am today. Volunteer. And when you volunteer and you pick that nonprofit or whoever you're going to volunteer for, do it enthusiastically. Do for them as if you were getting paid for it. That's the thing that I could say. And then learning how to speak in front of groups. I got up here teasing about a third grade class, but I actually had to do that last month. Tell your own story. Nobody can tell it better than you. So when I found out that I was going to start my own business, I started telling everybody I ran into, I'm starting a business. I'm starting a business. And then they would ask, maybe later, what kind of business you're going to start. And it gave me an opportunity to tell them. So do some kind of networking, even if you have to start in your family, where you live, in your neighborhood, any kind of group you're part of. Just start telling people what you're doing. Because every client that I've had is because somebody told them about, I know somebody who does that. And I would get a phone call. So that's how this thing started. And last but not least, if you get a mic like me, I am still nervous about talking, believe it or not, but I'm getting better.
I would echo a lot of the same attributes that have been described. Mark Zuckerberg has painted on the walls at Facebook, done is better than perfect. And I think sometimes that's fun. And I'm a perfectionist. I love perfect. And I tell people that I work with, I strive for perfection, knowing it may not be attainable, but at least if you do, that you'll hit excellence 9 times out of 10. So, and that's in every characteristic, whether it's being honest or whether it's moving forward and being engaged. With what she shared about volunteerism, our program actually has required in it 200 hours of essentially it's work experience through volunteerism. So working at a food pantry, working with faith-based, feeding the homeless, being a student ambassador for gardening programs that we're implementing in schools, things like that. And it's interesting because some students the other day were complaining about it, and they were like, well, we're doing all this volunteerism. And it was a disconnect. They don't understand what the value of that is. Today's employer wants to see, particularly within millennials, that they're thinking beyond themselves, that they're doing something for the community, that they're engaged, that they don't just do the minimum of what they're supposed to be doing, that they're actually going out and doing extra. And so by having these 200 hours of work experience, not only do I give my students an opportunity to experience food service in a variety of realms, because there are 15, 20 things that they may do over the period of these 200 hours, but through the VKSU, you can download what you've done over the time that you've been here. You're not gonna remember it all, you're not gonna write it all down. So I've been able to design this so that our students will be able to put that on their resume. And they'll have everything that they did for those 200 hours, and it's going to be meaningful to employers. They want to see that you're giving back, that you're thinking about others. And if you did it and you can't articulate it, if you haven't been detailed enough to put it together, you'll never have that conveyed to the employer. They won't see the value of that because you didn't show it to them. So it's important that that you come to these kinds of things. And you guys are already the outliers. You came. You're the ones that care about these next steps, and that's awesome. Part of what you need to do is make sure that you're giving yourself the full tool set to be successful. And that's where working with career services and our partners here on campus can help provide that. It's also where, when these ladies sit down at the tables, while their fields may not be something that you particularly have an interest in, their experiences, and probably more than their successes, but some of their oopses, are the greatest life lessons. Because I think we probably all agree, we probably learned more from some of our oopses than we did the things that came naturally or came easily. And so please do make sure you take advantage to talk to them. And to anyone, if your professors bring people to class, if you meet alumni, sit down and say, what was the best class you took? Who was the best professor? Take the professor that might be a little scary, right? Maybe the reason they're scary is because they're actually holding you accountable and making you work, and that gives you the value. You mentioned earlier your comfort zone, and I personally believe we learn being pushed outside our comfort zones. If you're always in your comfort zone, you never will have growth. And so by being pushed out of that is what makes you better, makes you stronger. And at the end of the day, you will pass on those same attributes to someone else that you've inspired.
And Ms. Murphy, you made a great point about networking. Talk to me about how networking has kind of helped you along in your ability to connect and communicate with others. How has that been a benefit for you?
Things happen after graduation. I found in my community a business association, and there were quite a few of them. I didn't realize that, but there was something called BNI, something called something core, but I ended up being very active for a whole year in something called the West Cobb Business Association. And what that did is it gave me access to the Cobb Chamber of Commerce, and I had access to all the other 10 business associations in Cobb by just joining one. I've met a lot of people, political, non-political, business owners, some that work for other companies still, but they have a wealth of knowledge. And all I have to do is walk up to one person, no matter what their industry is, and ask them a question. It's like they want to tell you everything. I want to tell it all, I want to tell it, I want to tell it. So it's always good, like I said, to be able to tell your own story. But if you need something, you're either going to find it in another person or it's written in a book. So you got to, again, keep putting yourself out. Just recently, September of this year, I had an opportunity to participate in a program run by the Cobb Chamber, and it was called Partners in Education. My school was Marietta Middle School, a city school, and I guess it may come in the low-income zip code, I'm not sure, but they were so glad to have me at Marietta Middle School as an adult business owner. I didn't have children enrolled in the school, and I would do whatever they asked me to do. Anything they asked, I would just go and do it. So at the end of the school year, school year, they nominated me as partner in education at the chamber for that calendar year, which was 2012 through 2013. And lo and behold, I won the thing, or Shirley's Helping Hand won. So it was the business first award. And I didn't go to win the award, I just went to do what they needed done. So that was a plus under networking. The other program that I participated in with the chamber is called Teacher for a Day. You can nominate yourself, kind of tell them what school you want to go to. And I chose an elementary school called Park Street Elementary, met the instructor who was also Teacher of the Year at her school, and I observed her in the classroom for a half day, and then a little later in September, I went for a full day. And basically, the children was just so glad to have somebody there. All we did was read stories to each other, and then a little, who the characters were, was it set, and that kind of stuff. And at the end of that day, an 8-hour day in that classroom, half of those students came up and gave me a hug. It really surprised me. I was going but they still not hugging in school. But it was a really good experience, and it was something that had I not been connected to the Cobb Chamber, I wouldn't have had a chance to do. What else is going on with networking? Over at a high school where I live, it's called Hillgrove High. They actually have a culinary department, and once a year, they invite people from the community as judges for their senior projects. And I will do that again next month. It will be my second time. And again, it is so much to do. It's just that you got to be willing to do it. And everybody says to me, how do you have time to do all this stuff? And I'll be going I don't know. Want something done, that's a busy woman. But networking is important, and I suggest that you start now.
I did want to ask you, Ms. Smith, talking about, Dr. Hardiger mentioned kind of failures and setbacks. If you have any examples you can share of lessons learned throughout your career exploration.
My career, you mean joy career or career in general? Well, I failed to mention earlier that when I gave my introduction that one of my jobs was in print sales. I told you that I was a layout artist for a printing company. That job helped me secure one in printing sales, which I took even though it wasn't a creative position, and that's what drives me. I took it because, as I said, I was a single mother, and it paid a lot. Sales paid good, and it provided a car for me, so that eliminated my car expense. And once I developed this company, they were new into the Cleveland, Akron area. several $1 million accounts, and then another company stole me to be their sales representative, and then eventually that's when we moved to Georgia. So I left that career, but one of the reasons I went into sales was because when I was with the advertising agency, they downsized and I lost my job. And it forced me to look for something else. So I ended up making 3 times as much money from a different job in sales that I was making in advertising. So that turned out to be a plus. Plus I had a lot of perks, like the car, for instance. And it seems like every time that I left a job for some reason, that I was forced out of the job for a reason, I ended up with a better one. So that's definitely positive. And actually, the most recent change was about 3 years ago when I was contemplating, do I make the plunge from costume jewelry into high-end jewelry? Found that I had a medical condition and needed surgery, and wasn't sure that I'd wake up after the surgery. And when I did wake up, after thanking the Lord, I said, I'm going to go for it. I do not want to go to my deathbed thinking, I wish I would have tried to make it as a high-end jewelry designer. So that was an absolute plus. And it's, the people in the industry, in this industry anyway, are very helpful. Even my competitors, they're so willing to help. Call me anytime, email me. Here's my home phone number, my cell phone number. I have never seen that in other industries, so maybe it wasn't looking, but anyway.
Dr. Hardaway, we wanted to talk a little bit about your school and your area. You're helping to bring culinary sustainability to the forefront of the industry. Talk about where students who are looking for careers in that area can start to investigate career fields and jobs in that area.
Well, I think and I'm going to back it up a little bit from that. Let me ask you guys, whether you're an alumni or a current student, how many of you have ever skipped class? Raise your hand. Okay. A lot of them. It starts with education. It really does. I mean, if you went to a fast food restaurant, and I'm not a big fan of fast food restaurants, but let's just assume for the purpose of illustration, you go to McDonald's, you order the number 2, you pay for it. Would you ever think to walk out without your food? I mean, we'd never think to do that. As a customer-driven society, we want the biggest bang for our buck. We've all stood there with somebody else ordered food, and there are 2 fries on 2 different trays, and one is heaping over, and the other looks like it ate half of it on the way up to the counter. And mentally, you want your burger on that tray with lots of fries. Even if you're not even gonna finish them, that's your big bang. If you get a 9-piece nugget and you open it up and they're 10, score, right? If they're 8, no, McDonald's is screwing you. So, as consumers, we want big bang for our buck, but we skip classes, or we go to classes that we don't buy the book, or we don't really have to do anything, we don't have any homework, we're not held accountable, but we want an A. And there's this massive disconnect, particularly in education, in terms of the purpose of education. There are degree mills online. You can go buy a piece of paper for the wall if I'm important. That's easy to do. It saves everybody some time and money, and it makes the classrooms more efficient. So if that's what your goal is just a piece of paper, go buy that. If your goal is to be successful, if your goal is to be meaningful and to be able to contribute, then it's important that you get the skills and the knowledge and the abilities. It's important that you push yourself and that you use that class time and those professors as resources, and that you translate that into how do I go get jobs. In our field, the range of jobs, I mean, people hear culinary, oh, okay, you have to be a chef. There's so many food elements. I mean, Coca-Cola has an entire conglomerate within itself that's focused on feeding the people in the building. You know, it's not high-end chef work. It's in the terms of, oh, I've got to go work in a restaurant, I've got to work 80 hours a week, and that's it. I know a guy who actually won a major competition on Food Network as a chef, and he works in a nursing home, a high-end nursing home, as the executive chef. And he's like, they eat at like 4:30. I'm home by 8. No big deal. You know, he's not closing a restaurant at 3 o'clock in the morning. There are people, if you're a night owl and you love the hospitality industry, nightclubs might be perfect for you. If you hate being up past 10, don't go into the nightclub field. They didn't start until after 10. So part of it is taking advantage of why we educate ourselves, why do we come back and educate ourselves, why do we go into different careers and look to different things, because there's so many points that go to who we are and what gets us excited. But there's also the element of being aware of what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and play to the strengths and acknowledge the weaknesses. If you are a morning person and you are not doing anything after 8 o'clock, then you need to make sure that you're in a field that